Hi, it's Michelle again, and I'm finishing up these questions that I had. This is part 2. I was cut off in the middle of talking about acrylic inks. So the question was, can I draw with a drawing ink on top of one coat of the pouring medium and then do another coat of the pouring medium on top of it? And that's exactly what I do in my paintings. I'm going to show you one I happen to have here. This one. This is actually some ink. It's the ink, and then I did thin out some soft body acrylic with airbrush medium, and then I poured acrylic on top. And so there's also some cool ones. I don't have them in front of me, where I change the sheen of the paint, so some is glossy, and then I'm using the airbrush medium mixed with the white ink, and I get a very matte effect. And you can probably see that in my video when I show a bunch of these finished ones. Anyway, so I just wanted to make sure that you use acrylic ink on top of acrylic, because a lot of drying inks are dye-based and they have a different binder in them than acrylic, and they may not bond properly with the acrylic paint and the acrylic mediums. So that's my suggestion, is use. And the other thing I mentioned is that many of the drawing inks that are colored don't have pigments in them. I mentioned they're dye-based, and dyes tend to fade. So just something to consider. Acrylic or pigments that are in oil paint, in watercolor, in acrylics, all are pigment based, and most pigments have been studied for longevity, and they call that light fastness. And I should make another whole video on that, talking about light fastness and light fastness ratings and so forth, but that'll be for another video. Then the other question is one of my pieces, the red one with the red dots that I made with acrylic spray paint. And the question was, I used a Liquitex spray paint and he couldn't find it in Guatemala, so can you use regular spray paint from a regular house paint store? Well, that's an interesting question. I wouldn't recommend using house paint products. They're not intended for the type of longevity that artists demand from their materials, and more for a few days or for, you know, a week or so. I'm sorry, someone just knocked on the door and I got distracted. Not a week or so. They're made for maybe a 10-year lifespan, maybe a little bit longer, but artists are really looking for stuff that will last for centuries. So I would steer away from house paint products unless for some reason you have testing to prove that it's made for much longer term use. Then how about Krylon or any other brand? Now Krylon, I haven't tested Krylon, but it is an artist's material, so you may want to check and see if it's been tested and what kind of longevity it has. And then the question follows, as long as it says gloss acrylic paint. So when it says acrylic, then I would be more likely to recommend using that product because it's acrylic. So acrylic will, again, bond with acrylic, and it should be chemically compatible. So I hope that answers the questions, and if anyone else wants to send me specific questions, I kind of like answering them, so I'll do the best I can. I really need to be focusing on my own art and stuff. I just do this for fun because I love it. But thank you for the questions, and please check out my blog. It's called themindfulartist.com. It's more than a blog, it's actually a whole resource for artists. And I have a section of videos, I have articles to read in there, and I'd be delighted if you'd subscribe to my newsletter. I do that about once a month, and I send out articles of interest to artists and creative people about creative process and about materials and techniques, and I'd love to have you connect with us there. All right, take care.